I have to take a couple of deep breaths after that, y'all. I have a reading for you this morning. The title of this reading is Vahavta, which is Hebrew, might be familiar to some of you. And the title references a part of the Shema, the daily prayer recited in Judaism, that says in part, "You shall love Adonai, your God, with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might." This poem entitled Vahavta comes from Aurora Levins Morales. Say these words when you lie down and when you rise up, when you go out and when you return, in times of mourning and in times of joy. Inscribe them on your doorposts, embroider them on your garments, tattoo them on your shoulders, teach them to your children, your neighbors, your enemies, recite them in your sleep, here in the cruel shadow of empire. Another world is possible. Altogether, they have more death than we, but altogether, we have more life than they. There is more bloody death in their hands than we could ever wield, unless we lay down our souls to become them, and then we will lose everything. So instead, imagine winning. This is your sacred task. This is your power. Imagine every detail of winning the exact smell of the summer streets in which no one has been shot. The muscles you have never had to unclench from worry, gone soft as newborn skin. The sparkling taste of food when we know that no one on earth is hungry, that the beggars are fed, that the old man under the bridge and the woman wrapping herself in thin sheets in the back seat of a car, and the children who suck on stones, that all of them nest under a flock of roofs that keep multiplying their shelter. Lean with all of your being towards that day when the poor of the world shake down a rain of good fortune out of the heavy clouds and justice rolls down like waters. Defend the world in which we win as if it were your child. It is your child. Defend it as if it were your lover. It is your lover. When you inhale and when you exhale, breathe the possibility of another world into the 37.2 trillion cells of your body until it shines with hope. Then imagine more. Don't waver. Don't let despair sink its sharp teeth into the throat with which you sing. Escalate your dreams. Make them burn so fiercely that you can follow them down any dark alleyway of history and not lose your dreams, not lose your way. Make them burn clear as a starry drinking gourd over the grim fog of exhaustion, and keep walking. Hold hands, share water, keep imagining so that we and the children of our children's children may live. So I joked a couple of days ago that I should have entitled this service TBD, to be determined. And actually it fits pretty well. Finally, some things were determined yesterday, right? And I won't lie, it's been a week, y'all. It's been hard pulling my thoughts together for you this morning. Here's where I want to begin, though. I want to begin with the moment last night when I got to sit with my 3 daughters and listen to the first woman elected to the office of Vice President of the United States. And last night I got to sit with 2 of my daughters who are biracial and listen to the first woman of color elected to the office of Vice President of the United States. Last night I felt certain parts of my brain and my body relax that I didn't even know were so knotted up. I had gotten so used to the tension. This week has felt like an eternity for some of us. And how much possibility. We have lived in possibility, and we have seen some things that at times some of us have thought might be impossible come to truth. It is not easy this morning to just stop and rest and feel the relaxation in my body, to feel the joy, because it is still hard to know what to trust these days. But this moment, so long in coming, deserves to be marked and celebrated, not because a particular political party won, but because some dreamed of possibilities for the expansion of life have come true. The world has changed. We have been changed. The world has been changed. We have changed the world. Let us stop and just take that in for a moment. Remember way back last Sunday? Can you remember back that far? We talked about John Lewis. If you were here, you'll remember, and how his great-great-grandfather had registered to vote in 1867 following his emancipation from enslavement. But then it took another 100 years of oppression and struggle for that voting power to actually be fulfilled and realized in the body of John Lewis. Well, today, let's also, we'll remember the spirit of John Lewis, but let's also call on the spirits of the women who fought for the right to vote and finally gained the right to vote 100 years ago. And today, 100 years later, we have a woman. It took 100 years. We have a woman going to serve in the second highest office in our country. For all those people who worked and fought and sacrificed in the intervening 100 years, we must celebrate and give our thanks. We have no right to be hopeless, as Holly Near says. It dishonors those who go before us. So that's where I want to begin with you all today. And now I want to take a little bit of a turn and just I know this might be a surprise to some of you, but I occasionally get feedback that there's been too much political talk at church, or that church should be a place for spirituality and personal spiritual growth and not politics. And I want to take some time to unpack that a little bit this morning and respond to that, because I think this is a good moment to do that. Our congregation is not a place for political partisanship. We are not here to make Democrats or Republicans or libertarians out of each other. We are here to journey in covenantal relationship with one another, to grow spiritually, to keep becoming more fully ourselves, healed and whole ourselves, so that we might love bigger and better and wider, not in some kind of abstract way, but love that is incarnate right here in this world with these people. As Richard Rohr puts it, the real purpose of the spiritual journey is to expand people's ability to do good by liberating them. It's a pretty good definition in my book about what we are about when we talk about spiritual growth in our congregation. The inner life must be connected to and manifest in the outer world. Otherwise, what is the point? Our lives and who we love and what we value are political. They are connected to the polis, P-O-L-S, that Greek word polis that basically means the structure of community. So at the same time as I get feedback occasionally that we're talking about politics too much in church, I sometimes pick up from folks on the flip side that they could do without the praying and the meditating, the talking about our spiritual health, the turn towards the mystical that I sometimes invite you all to take with me. But here's something I've been thinking about, y'all. Only living in the political world without a sense of something larger than any one of us, without a grounding in the mysteries of life and death, without a connection to the life force of this universe, without a commitment to love, well, that just leads us to despair at best, or a kind of heavy-handed lording it over other people when we quote unquote win. At worst, it can lead us to a dangerous faith in human capacity to control life. When we are only loving the world with our might, our political power, our might, but not without our hearts and our souls intact. We know that life cannot be controlled by might, much as we try. We see that over and over. I mean, how many of you, pause and think about this for a minute, how many of you have had moments when you just wanted everything to stay the same? When you want time to stop and slow down? I'm not going to lie, I'd like to stay in that simple moment I described to you earlier, that moment of just sitting with my daughters, enjoying hearing the first woman vice president-elect of our country. I'd like to stay there, but we know we can't stay there in that moment. Life is nothing if it is not alive and changing. When people stop changing, when life stops changing, there is no growth, and that means death. Think about that phrase in the wisdom story this morning, inviting us to trust the deer and the wolf, to remember that it is always worth waking up in the morning to see what might happen. Life wants to grow. That is what life is. Life is always to be determined. It is contingent and messy and uncontrollable. And in the perspective of what is called process theology, all of existence is always in the process of becoming. Everything is relational, down to the smallest quantum particles. Every moment contains all the moments that preceded it, our history, and every moment contains the possibility for something new to come into this world, the possibility of healing, the possibility of beauty, the possibility of more of life itself. Some folks call that possibility God. Some folks call it life energy. Some folks call it the seed of love. Some folks call it the lure towards goodness. Some folks don't call it anything, but simply feel it is there sometimes. And I don't really care what you call it, but it is that possibility that we are called to love with all of our might and with all of our heart and with all of our souls. That possibility that always exists. In our spiritual lives, we pay attention to that possibility, to what is life-giving, and we practice our ability to be life-giving to others, to give our lives to create more life in this world. In our political lives, then, we are called to create structures and systems that do the same thing, that widen the pathways for abundant life for everyone, so that everyone might access the gifts of life. And I want to be clear this morning, y'all. I don't think our political lives are just about elections and electing people to office. Our political lives encompass so much more than that. Our political lives encompass the things we do on a daily basis, how we spend our money, who we choose to be in relationship with, how we use our voices as neighbors and as parents or as teachers, as consumers, as citizens. Every day we can make choices, decisions to bring more life, to nurture and protect and liberate the life around us. It is not always easy to tell what choice will bring more life and for whom. Believe me, this week our family has also been trying to decide whether our children will go back to school in person in January. It is not always easy to decide, to know what decision will bring more life and for whom. I know that. This is when it is so important to be in community, in relationships of accountability, because my view all by myself is often too narrow. We can never see all the way to the end of the consequences of our choices, right? The gift of being in community, of listening to one another, of never being done learning, of staying open and willing, is that we learn. And when we learn better, we can do better next time with our choices. So this morning, y'all, I want to, for sure, celebrate and give thanks for all of the moments that made this moment in our nation possible. All the moments when people chose possibility, even when, even when they had no hope that they would ever see this day. And this morning, let's recommit ourselves to simply looking out for life day by day, hour by hour, living in our hope for another world. Because we know there's a lot more work to do, a lot more healing, a lot more liberation to come. I return over and over and over again to these words that actually they come from a novel by Barbara Kingsolver called Animal Dreams. There's a character in that novel who is living in war-torn Central America. And she says that revolution is not a quote, great all or nothing. She says instead this: I think of it as one more morning in a muggy cotton field, checking the undersides of leaves to see what's been there, figuring out what to do that won't clear a path for worse problems next week. Right now, that's what I do. You ask why I'm not afraid of loving and losing, and that's my answer. Wars and elections are both too big and too small to matter in the long run. The daily work, that goes on, it adds up. It goes into the ground, into crops, into children's bellies and their bright eyes. Good things don't get lost. End quote. Good things don't get lost. The daily work goes on, it adds up. Life grows. All is always to be determined. Another world is possible, always, and hallelujah for that. The blessing and the burden of our faith is that we must do what we can to make it so, to make that other world possible. I leave you today with these brand new words written by Reverend Mr. Barb Grieve, The Work of Democracy. When the glee of the progressives is stilled, when the posters in yards are removed, when the lawyers and politicians and pundits are quiet, when the protesters are safely home, the work of democracy begins to prioritize the vulnerable, to reunite the caged children, to feed the hungry, to house the houseless, to release the prisoner, to decriminalize poverty, to provide health care for all, to educate the masses, to care for the earth, to protect the vote, to let life flourish. So let's get to it, friends. The continued work of democracy, which is the work of building the beloved community. And may the spirit of life come to us over and over and over again. May we love it with all of our heart, with all of our mind, with all of our soul, with all of our might, for ourselves and for the children of our children's children. May it be so. Amen.